I am hoping that this offers everyone a bit of insight on some resiliency efforts that can be taken with regards to natural and man-made hazards. And starting us off is Estefan Abagabir. He is our Regional Economic Disaster Recovery Coordinator. So I will pass it on to him.
Thank you, Jessica. Can everyone hear me all right?
You're a bit muffled, Estefan.
Can you hear me now?
I think that's a bit better.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. We really appreciate your time. Before we begin, I work for the AMPDC, and one of my main jobs is to help the local two counties, Accomack and Northampton, to help the business community come up from COVID-19, and that includes some of these training resiliency seminars, which is good. But without further ado, we will begin. Jessica will be sharing my screen now. Can anyone see that just fine? Yeah. All right. So to begin, I will be giving an in-depth review of past threats and resiliency threats, natural disasters, just to kind of give an overview of where we've been and where we are now. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you see in the list, these are all the resiliency threats we've had over the years. I mean, from the 1800s, 1900s till right now in the 21st century. We will be highlighting some of the most current and pressing threats that we've seen so far from 20th to 21st century, and some that are at least occurring, but still we touch on them and highlight some threats that they bring. And moving on. Now, these are the most frequent disasters. These are the ones that have brought us more from property damages, crop loss, has affected ecotourism to tourism, you name it. And some of the notable, I highlighted biohazards just because that's one of our main themes of today as well, discussing COVID-19 in relation to resiliency. And some notable disasters that have also occurred with us that kind of go in relation to what COVID-19 has done. Hurricane Sandy to Isabel, Ernesto, and I was here also during Hurricane Sandy, and I've seen, the disasters that has brought. I was working with the agriculture and the agriculture industry here, and so seeing what it has done, it definitely has caused some resiliency threats, but we have learned from them. We have applied appropriate resources to help our local communities and allocate public policy efforts to help these local communities that have been devastated, from restaurants to small businesses and NGOs, you name it. And so we're gonna move on. So here I wanted to have some examples from the NOAA, that's the National Climate Data Center. And so as you can see from the left to right, it lists the county, the date, the system name. For instance, for Isabel, it affected Accomack and Northampton, and it cost $12 million in crop damage, which is immense. And that's a huge loss for our agriculture sector, as the shore is a huge producer of crops, and especially aquaculture from both coastal lines, the bay side and the seaside. And so I'll be moving on to the next one. So this is, now all these storms are very recent. These are from the 21st century, from 2000 to right now. The latest one was Sandy, and that cost almost 14, to be more precise, 13 million property damage for both counties. And that includes from, the vital restaurants that have, been established on the shore for a very long time, especially those in Chincoteague. Chincoteague was hit very hard, and they're a vital variable in Eastern Shore and its economic status and recovery. And all this data comes from the NOAA. This slide, all this information also comes previously from our 2016 hazard mitigation plan. So all this data is current and up to date. Now, one thing I wanted to touch on as well is that in our 21st century right now is the coastal erosion and flooding. Now, this is one of the major threats, along with COVID-19, to hurricanes that are most occurring and ever going. From the left side, from a study from Randolph-Macon College, we've seen from the reds from 1851, that's where the coastline was. And just in 150, close to 150 years, it just receded to all those lines pushed back against the Atlantic side of the shore. And if you've been around those islands, Hog Islands, Wallops Island, you can see the major differences that it has had. And I've been going there since I was a kid, and I've seen the differences and the effects it has on the aquaculture industry. And then from the top to bottom on the right side, you can just see how coastal erosion just completely pushes that and devastates, for instance, our agriculture. I know a few aquaculture industries that I won't obviously name them, but they've lost a significant amount from clams to oysters been affected by these coastal erosions. And these erosions are caused from high winds, even to moderate winds, sea level rise, ocean tides, and just waves. And here, this is done by a study from the Atlantic Coast Comprehensive Study Report in 2015, just to highlight how the sediments is carried through high winds, again, to ocean tides, and the movement of bayside and water. Basically, it comes from all the way up north, it trickles down all the way down to the mouth of the bay. It almost works like a vacuum, basically. It just sucks all that sediment, and it creates a good amount of erosion for bayside and seaside. And then moving on. And so before we move on to those that have least affected us, I do want to touch on as well on climate change, which connects to climate adaptation and coastal resilience. Two major themes in this resiliency presentation, and an ever-going struggle that we have been dealing with. Friends, so to start off with, to highlight climate mitigation addresses the root causes, specifically reducing those gas emissions to reduce the increase of temperatures. That way we don't get those strong storms, strong hurricanes, for instance, produced like Sandy. And that way we mitigate those future problems that way don't affect our future generations, any economic progress for the future. Now, climate adaptation is different. It's progress adjusting to now and current challenges affected by climate change or produced by climate change to kind of drastically lower the risk. Now, both approaches go hand in hand. One cannot work without the other, and both are necessary to coastal resilience and climate adaptation. And all this information is coming from the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, and some of this information also came from The Guardian. So in terms of coastal resilience, formulating long-term and short-term practices is key to keeping our, especially some of our major industries on the shore, aquaculture and agriculture. Throughout the years, we have seen how the coastal lines have risen, or how when storms come in, how much the water floods and massive winds have affected those industries, losing much of money. But these are practices that kind of help these communities bounce back and react to these storms appropriately and accommodate those resources to those most in need. And yes. Now, these are moderate to less frequent occurrences, from well water contamination to tornadoes and fish and biodiversity decline. Now, I do wanted to point out that the fish and biodiversity decline, I did put that in both most occurring and those moderate to less occurring, because, for instance, the menhaden or bunker from the 1970s to 1990s, there was a huge overfishing problem that it caused populations declines for other fish, as it's one of the most important fish in the bay and in the Atlantic Sea, that creates almost a chain from bottom feeders, crabs, oysters, clams, to the top predators, to sharks and drums, which overall affects the biodiversity of our bay, affecting from our clams to our aquaculture industry. And I just wanted to highlight that from the bottom right, you can see how much overfishing has affected the bay. And then so invasive species, we've seen that already with, good God, I forgot the name of the little rodent that comes in and out. Tornadoes. Now, the good thing about tornadoes, even though how devastating they are, there have been in total 17 tornadoes, and that is separate in each county since the 1950s, which that's, in terms of statistics, that's good. And then now also I did want to touch on COVID-19. These are some of the most significant impacts to our regional economy. And as you can see all the way below, tourism and ecotourism have been very heavily hit us, and we've seen in various reports in terms of economic growth and just bouncing back. And I know Shingatig has been hit very hard as well, as they've been a very vital variable for ecotourism, especially. I go almost every Sunday there to surf and run and take pride in that nature. Now these, before we go to questions, I did wanted to give out 3 public resources and 1 training program that I found in my research. Ready Campaign is a government website, and it's designed to help educate and kind of give also additional training programs to small businesses, large industries that specifically help target, all these most occurring listed natural disasters, from high winds or hurricanes, tornadoes, you name it. Even COVID-19, now they have a new section just for that. So at the SBA Small Business Administration, they have a new or ever updating page that kind of gives assistance and needs and how to approach specific problems that the business community needs to address, per se. And the last one is the Business Resilience Certification Consortium International. Now apologize for that. They are an award-winning company known globally, and it helps from large industries to small businesses get certified and trained, and from customer service to IT problems. For instance, website build. So yeah. Does any of you have any questions before I pass it back to Jessica?
Next, we encourage any thoughts or questions. If you've got some comments or you're unable to unmute, you can press the little microphone if you hover down the bottom of your screen. If you're on a phone, you can press *6. I'm also happy to read anything out from the chat, but please just shout out, jump on in, and get interactive. Ask whatever you have on your mind.
Hi, this is Laura Wygand. I have a quick question. Are we going to be provided a copy of this PowerPoint so we could have the links to those resources that you just gave out?
Absolutely, this will be provided. And also we have, Jessica, we do have a list that we will be giving out, correct?
Yes, we are definitely going to hand out these resources. I have collected all of your emails through the registration, so they'll be sent out that way within a week, just so that we do have a day 2, and that way we can compile all of the information and resources that our various guest speakers as well as ourselves have put together for you.
Now, my email is below, as you can see. If you have any questions, from funding resources to getting this PowerPoint, please do not hesitate to contact me. I'll be glad to help you. All right, if nobody has any questions or concerns, I'll pass it back to you, Jessica.
Thank you, Estefan. I do have on our agenda that we were going to take a 5-minute break. I think we can keep moving. There wasn't a whole lot of discussion, so again, in respect of everybody's time, unless folks feel they need the break, I will keep on keeping on. I will pull up my screen here, folks. And Estefan, if you could just keep an eye out on the participants list, if anyone does hop into the waiting room, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Just bear with me, folks. Get myself sorted here. All right, y'all can see my slideshow there, Resiliency Today. Wonderful. All right, folks. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about some resiliency efforts, as well as resources that are out there that you can use to not only self-assess, but also research and get some insight on how your business can become more resilient. So let's get started. So again, welcome. I'm going to talk to you a bit about social vulnerability, resilience assessment, and go over some resources and financial assistance. As I mentioned before, for those of you that just joined us, I am Jessica Steelman. I'm the coastal planner with the Northampton Planning District Commission, and I'm excited to have you all here. So what does all of this mean? Resiliency, ecotourism, bringing the two together? Well, we're going to break that down together. And before we get started, take a minute, stretch it out, stay in your seat. Zoom is consuming a lot of our lives right now. So we want to be mindful of our bodies as well, and it'll help us to focus. And as well, please shout out, holler, questions. If you have any thoughts or comments, I'd love to hear them. We want to get this as interactive as possible, so please don't be shy. Okay, so here we have the Social Vulnerability Index. And what is it? So what this is that every community must prepare for and respond to hazardous events, both natural disasters like a tornado, pandemic, COVID-19, sea level rise and erosion, or even human-made events such as groundwater contamination, hazardous material spills, etc. A number of factors, including poverty, lack of access to transportation, and crowded housing, may weaken a community's ability to prevent human suffering and financial loss in a disaster. These factors and our ability to be resilient to them also affect our businesses and overall economy. So the SVI, the Social Vulnerability Index, is a database that was created to help emergency response planners and public health officials identify and map communities most likely to need support before, during, and after a hazardous event. The CDC uses US Census data to determine the social vulnerability of each census tract, and there are 15 factors grouped into 4 related themes. So I hope this works. It's just a quick little blurb for you here, and let me know if y'all can hear it.
Welcome to our video, Introduction to CDC's Social Vulnerability Index, also known as the SVI. Please visit svi.cdc.gov to explore our website and interactive maps after this presentation. All communities exhibit varying degrees of physical vulnerability to potential disaster, both natural and human caused. However, it is a community's social vulnerability that may determine how well it responds to and recovers.
Are y'all seeing that video as well? No. Okay. Let me swap the screens here. I was wondering if that was going to hook up right or not. There we go.
Maps after this presentation. All communities exhibit varying degrees of physical vulnerability to potential disaster, both natural and human caused. However, it is a community's social vulnerability that may determine how well it responds to and recovers from a disaster. Studies have shown the socially vulnerable are often less prepared for a disaster event, less likely to recover from it, and more likely to be injured or die. Effectively addressing social vulnerability decreases human suffering, and reduces post-disaster costs to society. Our group at ATSDR, known as GRASP, developed the SVI to help identify socially vulnerable populations before, during, and after hazardous events. The SVI is a database that ranks the relative social vulnerability of U.S. census tracts. We score and rank each tract in the nation on each of 15 census variables to determine its social vulnerability. The right side column of this graphic shows the variables we use in the SVI. The 15 census variables are further grouped into 4 themes. Tracts are ranked on these 4 themes as well. Finally, the sums of the scores for the 15 individual variables are ranked for each tract to determine overall vulnerability. So there are 3 ranking options for each tract, for each variable, for each theme, and overall. Our rankings were calculated using a percentile ranking method. A percentile rank of 0 means least vulnerable. A percentile rank of 1 means most vulnerable. All census tracts are ranked between 0 and 1. As an additional measure, we flagged tracts with any variables ranked at 0.9 or more to help us easily identify tracts that are particularly vulnerable. We also determined tract rankings within individual states. Here are SVI maps of Gwinnett County, Georgia, showing each of the 4 themes as well as its overall social vulnerability. As you can see, the vulnerability of any given tract may vary by theme. Some tracts are highly vulnerable for all 4 themes and will likely have the highest vulnerability overall. Other tracts may be highly vulnerable on 1 or more themes or have low vulnerability on all themes. You can use the interactive mapping application to create a map showing the social vulnerability of your own community, county, or state. And you can examine the detailed social vulnerability and ranking of any tract in the United States, as well as download SVI data and tools. Other data, including such features as hospitals or schools, can be combined with information on impending hazards to assess overall risk to a community. Emergency planners can direct specific attention to areas most in need of funding and physical support over the course of a disaster event. There are many potential uses for the SVI. Please visit the SVI website at svi.cdc.gov. Learn more about our methods and how to use the interactive map in our other videos.
All right, folks, so that was just to give you a brief idea of how it all works. I felt that they did a great job of explaining that, probably much more efficiently than I would have. And I think it's a great tool and a way to see also that if any of you are interested in checking out the vulnerability of your region, families' regions, if they're across the US, you have access to that tool. And again, that is linked and will be shared. I did want to take a closer look at each of our counties in the Eastern Shore region. So on the screen here, you can see Accomack County, and I followed their suit. So I have the overall vulnerability as well as the 4 themes. And as you can see, Accomack County is overall very vulnerable, with all 4 categories ranking in the top highest percentiles for vulnerability. Starting with socioeconomic status in green, it's a relatively even split across the county between top 75th to 100th percentile and 50th to 75th percentile. With household composition and disability in orange, we again see a relatively even split between the 75th to 100th and 50th to 75th percentile. Varies a little bit if we go down to the purple, which is race, ethnicity, and language. There's some variation across all percentiles from the 25th through the 100th. And then lastly, with housing type and transportation in blue, we see a slightly higher percentage of the county in the 75th to 100th percentiles. So unfortunately, very little of Accomack County is at all in the 0 or low percentile, as they mentioned, that 0 score, which does bring our overall vulnerability to be quite high. You can see in the dark blue, much of the county is in that dark blue and the teal there. So the top 4th, the top 3rd quarters. Northampton County looks very similar. The There's also overall a high vulnerability for Northampton County. And again, starting with the socioeconomic status in green, it's a relatively even split across the county between the top 75th to 100th and 50th to 75th percentile. With household composition and disability in orange, we see a larger portion of the county in the 75th to 100th percentile. We do see a little bit of a change here with race, ethnicity, language in purple. All of the county falls within the 50th to 75th percentile. And similarly, with transportation type or housing type and transportation in blue, there is a majority of the county in the 50th to 75th percentile. Again, ranking our overall vulnerability in Northampton County highest, quite high for the majority. And again, you guys can all go onto that site and take a closer look at the counties, the regions. A lot of the data that's on there can also be exported and you can save that. So what we're going to do next is I have kind of this interactive thing for us to do. It's going to be a word cloud. If you go open your browser and go to slido.com, I'm also going to put it into the chat for you. And then when it prompts you, you just enter the code W364. You'll be brought to a screen that allows you to start typing in words. And what I'd love for you to do is throw in some of your biggest resiliency concerns, and we'll get to see it in live time on the screen here for what kind of ranks with everybody in here as far as resiliency concerns. So I'll let y'all take a few minutes and do that. And just holler if you're having any trouble with accessing it. We're here to help. Feel free to throw as many as you want in there. I think you can keep entering them, and we'll see too if anyone duplicates, they'll start to pop out, and it's a great way to kind of get a sense from everybody. So we've got some good ones in here, or not good ones, whichever way you look at it, right? Employment opportunities is a big thing, hiring qualified employees, future planning, sustainability of the businesses, definitely infrastructure is huge. Without that, we don't have the businesses, right? Workforce education, workforce, employees. We are seeing a lot of that, especially since COVID. There's been a lot of employees losing jobs, employees not being able to find jobs, businesses not having a large pool to pull from or hire from rather, which does affect the business sustainability. Public transportation, definitely. Hurricane season, we've seen that do some damage. Give y'all another 30 seconds and then we'll chat about it for a minute. So keep on going. This is great. Thank you. Let's see if I can capture this on the screen here. Save that. That's great, folks. Thank you so much. This is a lot of great information. Attracting more business strong. Yeah, how do we do that? How do we get more people here that want to have businesses, that want to partake? All right. I'm going to take one last screenshot and I am going to try to anyway. right. All right, so I'm going to bring it back to the presentation here. Y'all can see this, so feel free to keep adding, but I wanted to hear from folks that threw things in here, kind of your thoughts on why that's a concern. If you have any ideas of maybe how it could be mitigated, how we could approach it, any efforts that you've tried to take or steps that you've made progress with. Again, if you want to unmute yourself, just hit the little microphone there if you hover over your screen, or *6 if you're on a phone. I know someone's got something to share. You guys threw a lot of great ideas in here, and it wasn't all me typing them in. So I'd really love to hear from all of you. That's what we're here for today, is not only to share our knowledge with you, but really get a sense of what the community and business community is looking for, is concerned about.
Jessica, my internet kind of broke out a little bit. What was your question earlier?
So we have this lovely word cloud of biggest resiliency concerns, and I'm just asking folks to share their thoughts and ideas, any efforts they've worked towards or on with regards to this, so that we can get some feedback from the community.
Okay.
So that we're better able to help them and better able to approach resiliency. No takers? All right. Well, I appreciate the ideas. We do have a saved copy of this, so I'll be able to take it down for our record exactly what some of the big concerns are here today. And we'll keep moving on. So one of the tools that can be used is this tourism business resilience self-assessment. This was developed for tourism industry organizations as a simple and inexpensive method of determining if tourism businesses are prepared for and able to maintain operations during and after coastal hazards, natural disasters, and extreme weather events. So just to highlight, tourism businesses are anything and everything that attracts folks to come visit us, right? So if you've got a shop, you've got a restaurant, hotels, Airbnbs, anything of that nature and more. Being able to change and being able to withstand and adapt to change has become a focal point for businesses and industries. And the resilient businesses recognize the vital role that planning, preparation, and collaboration play in developing and executing an ability to respond to challenges, adapt to changes, and thrive. This self-assessment is organized into 6 categories, and upon completion of each quiz, you'll be able to access a list of suggested next steps and resources. At any time, you can revisit your assessment by clicking on the View Questions button. And once you've completed all 6 sections, reflect on the self-assessment as a whole to see what it says about your organization's resilience. From here, you can begin to identify elements you may want to work on as starting points for continuing to improve your organization's resilience. And I will share with you. Go back one more here. What this looks like so that you can get kind of an idea. Y'all can see my screen there with the self-assessment up? Yeah. Wonderful. All right, so if you were to click on vulnerability, they're each separate, so you can really gear towards what you're interested in assessing. You simply start the quiz, and it's just a quick sampling of questions. I will go through and rank a few just so you can kind of see what it looks like. Of course, you want to answer to your business. And quick, finish the questions. They'll give you kind of a rundown of your results. And then you can also restart the quiz, view your questions, and you can click to access more resources. So they'll link you to a lot of great tools, websites, worksheets, business plans, things of that nature to access to help you with your level of vulnerability. So I highly encourage folks to take some time and explore that. I think it's a great tool, and they definitely have quite a bit of information that you can find and branch off of from there. All right. So the other thing I wanted to show you is from the United States Chamber of Commerce Foundation. It is part of their Resilience in a Box, is what they're calling it. And I am going to throw in this link to the chat. I'm going to ask that everybody, get away on me, partake in this. You're going to go ahead to the address listed on the screen there, or you can also just click it right from the chat box, and it's going to bring you to a survey. The questions are from the business preparedness checklist with the full document linked in the bottom of your screen there, but I also created it into an online questionnaire so that you're more able to easily answer it and get some insight right now of your score. So take 5 or so minutes, complete that, and we'll come back and kind of chat about it. If folks are finished and gotten through it all, just speak up, give me a heads up, let me know you're done. If you're still working on it, also the same, and we'll move on as soon as everyone's completed it. Was everyone able to see their score at the bottom once they completed it? Should have auto filled in for you. All right, well, I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to move on to the next part here. which is again, if you haven't closed that browser when you did the first word cloud, you should be able to pull it right open and see the poll asking what your score was. You could just fill that in. We'll get a viewing of kind of where we're all at, and we can talk about what these scores mean. Again, if you need that link again, it is in the chat. It's slido.com as you see on the screen there, and the code is right there for you, W364. All right, so it looks like we've got almost an even split there between the two highest scores. 60% are ranging from 33 to 40, and 40% are ranging from the 21 to 32 range, which is good that no one's in the 0 to 20. So let's look at what this means. A score of 0 to 20, which again, we saw no one pulled in as, means that your organization is unnecessarily at risk of interruption. And their recommendation is that you begin using resources now to assist in building resiliency. Again, those resiliency resources are linked on the screen. You will get those in a follow-up email, as well as a link to their business resilience workbook. A score of 21 to 30 falls right in the middle there. Your organization has taken some preparedness steps. You are less at risk, yet have room to improve using resources. And a score of 33 to 40, your organization is better prepared than most, and you can use the resources to address any gaps. Again, these resources are great as well if you are just trying to get a feel for where you're at. If you scored 40, wonderful. It doesn't hurt to check out the resources as well and just, stay up to date on the knowledge and information that's out there. It is not ever changing, but ever updating and being added to. So it's good to have on your back burner, saved in your bookmarks, saved to your computer. And again, as I mentioned, save that email when we send out these resources. So next I want to talk to you a bit about resiliency through ecotourism. What does resiliency mean to you? Does anyone have a definition of resiliency they'd like to share? Personal experience of what it means to you? Any sort of reference in terms of what resiliency means?
Well, at least for me, I think that if we knew like a disaster was coming from COVID-19 to a hurricane, is having the ability to kind of bounce back and knowing what to do after it happens, how to connect with the community, how to get appropriate funding, and how to accommodate public policy to address those needs.
Great, thank you, Estefan, definitely. And resiliency can be interpreted in many different ways. I'm going to give you some of the technical definitions. that they shared with us. But again, resiliency is going to look different for everybody and for every business. So resiliency, according to the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program, is the ability of coastal localities to adapt to changing conditions and to withstand the challenges brought about by a changing climate. Another definition comes from Resilient Virginia, who shares that resilience is the ability to identify risks and build the capacity to maintain or rapidly regain functionality and vitality in the face of chronic stressors or severe disturbances. For the short term, resiliency planning enables communities to better address extreme weather or other high impact events. And for the long term, community resiliency provides the ability to adapt and thrive despite changing climate, environmental, social, and economic conditions. Who here's heard of ecotourism? We've all heard of tourism, I'm sure. Folks that want to take a stab at it or have heard of it, what does ecotourism mean to you? What comes to mind when you hear eco and tourism kind of smashed together there? All right, so I'll go ahead and give you some definitions, get you started thinking about it. According to the International Ecotourism Society, ecotourism is responsible travel to natural areas that conserves the environment, sustains the well-being of the local people, and involves interpretation and education. So the Eastern Shore is definitely an ecotourism destination. A lot of our tourism here that we have is ecotourism. We tie in a lot of our tourist hotspots, restaurants, shops, museums into our ecotourism aspect, whether they're out paddling on the water and they're coming into dock or port, whether they're using our marinas, whether they are staying for the night, getting work done at a yacht center, hopping over to the visitor center, checking out some maps and activities, brochures, fair, island center museum, what have you. A lot of it on the shore is intertwined with the eco aspect. So resiliency plus ecotourism. You might be asking yourself, how do we bring together resiliency and ecotourism? Well, we can look at ecotourism as an economic driver, which in turn provides resiliency for business to thrive in a region with many natural and outdoor recreation areas. And when we look at the impacts of COVID-19, what did tourists alike and tourists and locals alike begin doing a lot more of as community gatherings and hospitality businesses were limited or closed? Shout outs. Did you notice any changes in the activities folks were doing, what they were coming here for?
They were coming to, enjoy all the outdoors, the nature trails, the beach, I mean, that was what was safe at that point in time, was to be outside and enjoying nature, being able to social distance. And fortunately, the shore offers, so much of that, from top to bottom. So
Definitely. Thank you, Joanne. It's exactly right. There was an increase in travel to rural areas. Of course, today we're focusing on our rural area, but in general, you saw a large movement of folks from urban areas coming to visit rural areas like the Eastern Shore, where there's an opportunity for all of those outdoor activities, camping, hiking, boating, paddling, just to name a few. And all of these can be categorized as ecotourism opportunities. So how does that ecotourism help against these natural hazards? Any ideas? We kind of touched on it, but get y'all up and moving, get your blood flowing. No wrong answers. All right, well, let's go back and look at our definition of ecotourism. Does anyone recall what that was about? Some of the key words in that definition? All right, so ecotourism involves the components of outside, like we just talked about, some of these activities, the camping, the environment, the natural resources. But I want to hone in on the keywords that ecotourism involves: interpretation and education. A huge part of ecotourism and acting as an ecotour guide, someone who provides tours, shares information about the natural resources, is the interpretation and education aspects. As a region, we can offer outreach and education to locals and visitors alike about proper land use and how to enjoy what the Eastern Shore has to offer naturally in a way that does not negatively impact how our quote unquote edge environments are. Is anyone familiar with edge environments? I'm sure you all are, but you don't realize it. So edge environments are wetlands, beaches, dunes. All of these contribute to the resiliency of the mainland by providing critical habitat and water quality protection, as well as a natural defense against the more frequent and severe storms and flooding resulting from climate change. Esteban touched on that in his hazards, showing you kind of how the coastline has shifted from being much wider to much more narrow, and even some of those gaps where there was a nice solid peninsula, and you saw where it kind of dipped and curved in, a lot of those tiny bays and marsh areas, all kind of cut out, where our barrier islands have shrunk, or so it seems. They haven't shrunk, of course, but because of the storms and the erosion, they appear a lot smaller, have gotten smaller. I guess they have shrunk, but that might be an inappropriate term. But you see that, and a lot of these edge environments, the dunes, the beaches, the marshes, they help fight against this wave action that he was talking about. These waves hit, create erosion. If we can sturdy up our edge environments and support those, we can also support the mainland, which in turn supports our resiliency as a community and as a region. And part of ecotourism, going back to that education, is understanding these concepts and being able to share with our tourists and people that we run into, people that come to our stores, our businesses, how our natural resources are a huge factor in protecting our resiliency. Resilient Virginia identifies 4 main components of a resilient community. Excuse me. They are ecosystem services, such as ecotourism, economic activities, infrastructure and buildings, and community action. That's you. Community action is everyone here, everyone that visits, seasonal folks, people that just love the environment and are able to share about it, advocate for it. Those are the 4 main components. So you can see here on the wheel, they kind of cut each of those components down further. So we're going to break it down and talk first about ecosystem services. We have green infrastructure utilized, land use planning for mitigation, farm and forest preservation, ecosystem stability through natural resource protection, economic activities, which include new resiliency businesses, innovative financing, business case for resiliency, economic diversification, and farm to table initiatives, which we've seen a lot more farmers markets, restaurants using a lot of the produce and local seafood, local crabs, local oysters here on the shore in our restaurants. Community action, which involves resiliency plan development, effective leadership, diverse community input. Again, that's all of you, that's our stakeholders, that's our folks that have a stake, have an interest in the resiliency of the region. Health and equity is addressed, and emergency management as well. The 4th quadrant there is infrastructure and buildings, which involves clean and reliable energy options, transportation adaptations, communication systems improvement, water management adaptations, and buildings designed for resiliency. Are there any examples or ideas folks have? Seeing this wheel, some things that they've noticed, maybe anything that they didn't realize kind of fell into helping resiliency? Okay. Also, so you know, for those of you that are attending tomorrow, a lot of this is going to be broken down further by some of our guest speakers, and they're going to touch on some of these things, such as emergency management, hazard mitigation, how to be resilient through a tourism lens, kind of the effects we've seen through the rise and fall of COVID. So definitely stay tuned, and hopefully all of you come back after this. All right. So Laura, you did ask earlier if links were going to be shared. They definitely are. We have created a living database. The link will be shared so that you can access it. And all of these resources are hyperlinked. So you can go right to the page. You can see the source. You can explore from there. You can save. There are workbooks, reports, various tools. For example, the FEMA Flood Map Service Center can point you to any map of whichever region you're interested in. Brochures, and again, this is living, so it's going to be updated. It's going to have the resources for financial assistance that Estefan touched on, and it will be changing as the resources are either updated, closed out, or added on to. So once you get this, be sure to check it out, save it, and look back to it often. So what can you do? How can you offer interpretation and education through your business? Quick rundown is basically, this is where I encourage each of you to sign up for the resiliency database. And that just means getting the link to it, saving it, and engage with your local nature conservancy, your planning district commission, your Department of Wildlife Resources rep, or just ask the park ranger next time you visit one of our state parks. There's so many outreach materials already available. By simply continuing to familiarize yourself with these tools, you can share this information with people who frequent your business by word of mouth, or even having some of these materials available at the counter. We offer materials geared towards restaurants, such as table tents and children's menus, so you can even get your kids involved, make it fun, but at the same time, they'll be learning all about it. And reaching out to the PDC, I have tons of information and brochures. I know some of our partners do as well. If you would like information and handouts, we'll also help you to develop any. Just reach out to me. My email's on the next slide. And then on a grander scale, if you're interested in going green to help protect these resources that bring visitors seeking ecotourism, you can check out the Virginia Green Travel Alliance, which is a program that started in the fall of 2007. As a partnership between Virginia Tourism Corporation, Virginia DEQ, and the Virginia Restaurant, Lodging, and Travel Association. Since that time, over 1,800 tourism operations have self-certified their environmental practices and been recognized as Virginia Green Travel Partners. The program provides recognition and resources for all sectors of the industry, including hotels, B&Bs, attractions, conference centers, restaurants, breweries, wineries, festivals, and events. And hopefully a lot of this will be coming back this spring and summer. So definitely worth looking into that. Just again, my email's on this page. I'm Jessica Steelman, the Coastal Planner with the ANPDC, and thank you all for being here. This concludes our presentation for the day. But I do want to, again, encourage if anyone has any questions for myself or Estefan, please, please, please shout out now. We'll hang on for a little bit. We did end a lot earlier than I anticipated. So I'm going to hang on for a bit. If anyone wants to chat one-on-one or has questions, please holler.
I do want to expand on what you said earlier, Jessica, on the ESVA financial assistance document. As you said, that is a living document. It's constantly updated. And in fact, I will be finishing it updated today. So I'll be sharing it with our Shingatig partners, our ESVA Tourism Partners Commission, and the chambers as well. So you have multiple ways to access it. This is basically a center to access all of the open and available information concerning COVID-19. Any resiliency practices you want to further, like I mentioned earlier in those links. And yeah, if you have any questions regarding that, please shoot me an email.
Thank you, Estefan. And again, both Estefan and I work together. We're happy to team up and help you all together. And we definitely encourage you all to reflect on the needs of your business and access this database to identify tools that could assist you in planning and preparing for the future. Hopefully not hazards, but better to be prepared than not. And as you leave today, I hope you feel better equipped to use ecotourism as a source of resiliency. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you, Evelyn. Eric, did you have any questions or comments? I see you're still hanging out with us. Want to join the team, help us with our next one?
Did you volunteer me for something?
If you're volunteering, we'll take you.
No, well, I just wanted to kind of sit in, you know, resiliency is such a hot topic for the shore, as well as most of Hampton Roads. I just wanted to kind of see what you guys were presenting, because there's always something to consider on the shore as well as in the MPO boundary area.
Right now, if
So
I
I don't think I'm going to be able to join you guys tomorrow morning. I have a conflict, but I've been trying to listen in today, but I think everything went good. Good information.
thank you, and we're glad that you made it. I'm seeing here you're from Hampton Roads BDOT, right?
Yes.
Great. Well, I'm glad you made it all this way. You didn't have to travel. I was hoping to do in person, but I can definitely include it in that follow-up email will be the links and presentations from tomorrow too.
Okay. Yeah. Because at first I was thinking it was going before they had something from Virginia Tech and UVA, or maybe UVA, where they put on a resiliency or sea level rise training where they did a lot of work with GIS. But this was a little bit more comprehensive, a broader, higher level approach from it, I think. So not so much the technical day-to-day task of which locations are actually flooding, but strategies across the board.
Thank you for that. We appreciate the feedback. And I'll stay in touch with you. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We do work closely with the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission over there. So
Yeah.
we're all in this together regardless here on the coast.
Okay, yeah. So you guys will probably be seeing us sooner or later. If we have to get over, you know, Jerry's still going to be in contact with you guys. So I think the last thing that we had was just the work